So everybody, let's bow our heads as Dawson swallows his food and then prays.
Okay, dear Lord, thank you for this wonderful day before football that we can gather, we can have fun, we can laugh, we can learn about you. Thank you for the wonderful food that was provided, and we hope we can learn more about you every week. Amen.
Thank you, Dawson. Thank you very much.
Just as I took a bite,
Let's
Keisha.
close these doors so like the air up here, the air conditioner doesn't
Oh shoot, just kidding.
hinder our hearing.
I got this.
You got it, Keisha.
If I ever lose my hands, it's Seville. Okay.
So today we are going to talk about the Ten Commandments.
Oh my God.
Whoop. All right. Today we're going to talk about the Ten Commandments. Who were the commandments given to on top of Mount Sinai? Moses. That is correct. That's Moses in a movie from a year before I was born. Called the Ten Commandments. What's that? No.
1908.
So,
That's what you were born.
as you look at the Ten Commandments, you'll always see they're painted with two tablets, two tables of the law, because two main parts tell us about loving who first and who next?
God.
Loving God first three commandments, and then loving neighbor. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Brenda.
What year did that come out?
What's that?
What year did that come out? Come out?
I don't know. Actually, I think it was early.
You
I
said
don't
it
know,
was a year
75?
before you were born.
I just made that up. I don't know. It was before I was born, but I don't know what year. Probably
Like 1908?
not 1908.
my God.
Not 1908. I'm not that old. So here's what I want you to do.
I
I'm going
don't
to
think-
you to grade.
That was kind of the idea.
Guys, listen up. I want you to grade your own paper, and I'm going to have you write something else in as we go along. Going through and looking at your test. Remember, before we give any answers, remember God, is the law good or bad? It's good. God gave it to protect us. It helps us live together as people. So the law is good. It helps to protect us. It's not there to spoil our fun, but it's so we live well and we don't hurt each other and cheat each other. And so God doesn't keep us guessing. There are some people in this world who will keep you guessing, but God tells us right up front what is right and what is wrong. We don't have to guess. And that's what He gives in the commandments. So the first three commandments: you shall have no other gods. Remember, we talked about last week, gods. Those could be things you put as most important in your life that would be more important than the true God. You should not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. So, we keep God first, and then the second thing, when we speak God's name, we use it to pray, give thanks, talk to God, but not to misuse His name by cursing or swearing or lying or doing other things, telling false things about God. And number 3, remember the what day?
Sabbath.
Sabbath day, to keep it holy. One of the ways we keep it holy, what do we do on Sunday when we come together here at church? Pray. What else do we do? Worship. What else do we do?
We sing.
Sing. What else do we do? Pastor Kevin?
Eat food.
Preach. Yes, Pastor Kevin preaches. We listen, all right? We hear God's word, and as it says in the catechism, we hear God's word and gladly keep it. Yes, Dawson?
We also eat food.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. All three of those things. So that's these first three. Right down below the third one, write these words. All three protect our relationship with God. All three of these protect our relationship with God.
That's the big R word.
The big R word, because that's really important in these 10 commandments, because everything is protecting a relationship. The first three are protects relationship with God, because if you don't do these three things, you kind of lose track of God, and it's hard to believe in God without keeping these three things. So, the next commandments is going to be protecting something different on every commandment, and we're going to write those down too. So number 4 is honor your father and mother. So, write this underneath it. Protects the family or the home. Write that down. It protects the family or the home. That's what the 4th commandment does. We talked about that one last week. It's at the top of the second part, the second table of the law, because home's your basic unit, all right? So it protects the family or the home. Yes, do that. Number 5, you shall not kill, and that protects life. Write that down under the 5th one. It protects life. The 5th commandment is to make life protected and to help you keep life. We're going to talk more about these last commandments today, but just for right now, write down number 6. You should not commit adultery. That protects marriage. That commandment is meant to protect marriage. So see, God has given us all these things to help protect. Number 7, you shall not steal. That protects your property. Write that down also. Right under the 7th commandment protects property, your stuff. So you're not stealing each other's stuff or property. Number 8, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. We'll talk about this later. That protects your reputation. Can y'all see that in the back? I know that getting down low, it's hard to see the writing. Reputation. Number 8 protects your reputation. Number 9 and number 10 both deal with coveting. We're going to kind of talk about those together because the first one is kind of mostly coveting your neighbor's stuff, your physical stuff, the house, things like that. And number 10 are living things, not coveting your neighbor's spouse or girlfriend or workers or livestock or, whatever you got that's living. So this protects you from, I know this is at the very bottom, hard to see, consuming desires. Consuming desires. That's what coveting is. We'll talk about it later. Coveting deals with consuming desires. All right, that's our review. So now flip over on the back, and you've got the commandments we're going to talk about today. And when Pastor Kevin and I say write this down, you can write it down. But for now, just let's say the 5th commandment together. You shall not kill. And let's read the explanation that's in the Luther's little catechism. Let's read it together. We are to fear and love God so that we do not hurt our neighbor in any way, but help him in all his physical needs. Neat thing about the little catechism, when Martin Luther explains it, he always puts it in a positive way. Not only does the commandment tell us what not to do, but it also tells us what we should do, like help our neighbors. Help them in every way that we can. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. Before we do, what are some ways of dying?
Heart attack.
Heart attack.
Military.
Military,
Get shot
get
with
killed,
a bullet.
all right?
Old age.
Stroke.
Stroke.
Kill yourself.
Killing self.
Suicide.
Shake.
Murder.
Stab. That means to be stabbed.
All right, what's that?
That means to be stabbed.
Oh, yes, okay. Yeah.
Or accident.
Car accident.
Death row.
Yes, death run. in Turkey.
Drowning.
Yeah.
Why are there so many ways to die?
Old age.
Old age. Some people just die of
There's
old age.
fire.
Die.
Choking.
Choking, yes.
Fire.
By the way, stop. Everybody know if you're choking, what's the sign? International sign of put your hands up like that and someone can come help you. Jake.
Oh, I would just be like
Falling and hitting your head on a rock.
Hitting your head. Having yes. Breaking
falling
your
off
head.
a cliff.
Car crash.
Yes. So, all these ways,
We're gonna
talk about more.
into the water.
Yeah.
That's too many ways.
Here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to know about killing someone.
Austin.
Telling someone what?
Uh-oh, Jesus laughing.
Killing and dying.
There's a lot of ways to die.
When we talk about this, Jesus also talks about it and he expands it. So it's not only killing someone physically, but it's also doing violence to them physically. It's also hurting them emotionally. You can kill people emotionally with your words.
It's hurting their
Or
family.
spiritually, or hurting their family. Hurting people we love.
When you said that we're killing someone, like when we disown them or stop friendships?
Yeah, you can In a way, it can. It can be Jesus said, he's going to say at one point, he says, even if you hate someone, it's like killing them. So when you do bad things to them, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, it's, in a sense, we are doing violence to them. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of those different ways. You might think, as you go through this today, think of anyone who has in some way hurt you emotionally or physically or spiritually. And think what that is. So someone mentioned one of the things listed here a while ago. God protects you from your neighbor. That's why you have this commandment, so your neighbor doesn't kill you, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. Protects your neighbor from you in case you really get mad and you want to stab someone or knock their head on the wall. It also,
Whoa!
it protects you from you. And that's what someone mentioned a while ago, suicide. Suicide is when you kill who?
Yourself.
Yourself, okay?
My dad said that
It's actually against the law.
he arrested someone that was
It's
like
illegal
psycho
to
and
kill
killing
yourself.
cats and bitches. Like, this is
No, a lot of law enforcement people come into a lot of situations that involve really
My dad
bad.
drove over to school this morning at 5:50 when practice at 6:30.
Oh,
And I just sit there on the bench of lunch, and the dog would go in there. I'm like, am I gonna practice like 40 minutes early? I was like, yeah, you can sit on the bench right there and put your shoes on. It doesn't take 40 minutes to tie my shoe.
so
It does.
not only is God protecting you from your neighbor and your neighbor from you, but also you from you. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians that with God you can get through all things, you and God together. And so, you know, if you ever get to feeling like suicide, like you don't want to live anymore, talk to somebody you know well, because you can get help. That's how God uses us to help each other. A lot of times, sometimes, I know my wife worked for a while where they had a crisis counseling line, and so someone would call, they're going to commit suicide, and so she would have someone else quickly go drive to their house and help them out of that situation. Either talking, maybe taking them to the hospital. Sometimes you need medication, different kinds of things. But anytime, remember, nothing is worth killing yourself for. You and God can get through stuff together, and that's part of what we do. We help each other get through stuff, because sometimes you can't do it alone. Yes, Ernie.
Is your wife a counselor?
Is what?
Is your wife a counselor?
Yeah, my wife is, she's two things. She's both a pastor, and she works as a chaplain at a nursing home, and she's also a licensed counselor, so she does counseling with people.
So, I had counseling yesterday, and my counselor said she was your wife.
Really?
Donna
Wow.
Gillespie.
Donna Gillespie, yes, she is very good. I've met her too. Donna Gillespie is great. Good, neat.
But also, sorry that we're keep talking about this. With suicide, you're also killing other people, right? Because I know.
When you die, it makes sense.
Yeah, like I think all of us have known at least somebody that you've heard about that has killed themselves, and at all.
I don't think I know someone actually.
Miss Dewey's friend.
Okay, well,
No, remember, JC, remember
Mr.
the guy who killed himself because he got bullied?
Oh, I don't know him.
or there was a teacher here a few years ago.
Oh.
It hurts other people besides yourself.
Wait, this is after
So-
our lecture.
Mr.
And
Dunn.
sometimes you may not know, because sometimes when it's suicide, they may not tell that it was suicide. Sometimes some of the family may be kind of embarrassed, but it hurts the family so much. My grandmother's sister committed suicide when she was very young. She had one baby about 9 months old and a boy about 3.
My neighbor's son.
Did it? Yeah. So a lot of us, you know, you may know, or you may come to know someone who's thinking about it, or someone who has done that. But really, truly, if you know if you or someone you know, do talk to some adult that you trust that could help have conversation and get some kind of help, because you really can. You can, with God, you and God can get through all things together. Sometimes we think you can't, but we really can, and people want to help you with that.
I
Jesus
recommend
says.
John McGillis.
Yes, tell her hello. honey.
I can go over here.
So, Jesus says, hating,
That's a cute doggo.
I have a little pet, I have a cat that was telling that. Jesus says hating is a form of killing, and Jesus also says we are to love our enemies. How do you love an enemy?
You're not mean.
You respect them.
Alright, you can respect, you can say you're not going to be mean to them in return, even if they're mean to you. Yeah.
You do the opposite of what someone just did. You don't punch them in the face.
You don't punch them in the face. Yeah,
That's
right. And if that's difficult to do,
Turn yourself.
if it's difficult, just walk away. God doesn't say you have to like everybody, but we have a fundamental love for human beings.
Hey, Pastor Casey, that's probably a good
Yes.
point. Because how do you turn somebody into an enemy?
You don't like them.
Do something bad.
You hate them. Or they do something bad to you.
You punch them.
They hit you really hard in the chest during football.
So,
Just doing practice.
well, an enemy is somebody who is trying to hurt you, harm you, kill you. But how do you get to the point where you hate them or would be ready to kill them
Oh,
in
they
return?
try to do it
During the
to you.
Hunger Games.
Oh yeah, because they like already, they might not have known it, but they've already killed you like inside.
During
Well, yeah, but how do you get to the point where you view them as an enemy? Pastor Casey talks about it because we fundamentally view everybody as a what?
An enemy.
A fellow what?
Person.
Fellow person, human. So in order to get to the point where you're ready to kill somebody, what do you have to do to that?
No longer view them as a
You
person.
either-
No longer view them as a person. You dehumanize them.
Or you have a
Oh,
disability.
that's not right.
Yeah, well, even with a mental disability, you will dehumanize. You will not view somebody as somebody who is worthy of love, affection, and what have you.
And most
So-
psychopaths these days, they have a rare condition that makes them not feel anything, so whenever they kill somebody, they don't feel anything.
Yep, they have no feeling whatsoever. But again, that's what you have to do. You have to get to the point where you have no feeling towards somebody else. I remember watching a video about this guy. He was talking about like Russia, and he was talking about, oh no, it was Iraq. Saddam Hussein. He was in like the Royal Guard in Iraq, and he said there were two things that they taught me to do. One of them I can't remember, but the second one was to kill without feeling. That means you shut off any
Feeling?
sort of
It's like a
Emotion
vampire
or-
shut off their-
personhood of the other.
So instead of like going, oh, if I kill them, this could happen. It's like, nope.
And it doesn't even have to be that extreme. Like, for example, if you see somebody on the side of the road that looks like they might be homeless and you call them a hobo, that's dehumanizing them because you're taking their personhood away from them. And so, and if you think about it, we do this a lot.
Well, the word though, that were you anybody here at Oktoberfest this past week? And did you go by that one tent where they were doing the picture of people where it looked like them, but it wasn't like
It was a
them?
cartoon version of
A
them.
cartoon version. It's called a caricature.
Oh, no.
And so when you caricature somebody or make them kind of like a cartoon, you're taking away their fullness of who they are, and you're
we
only
shouldn't have been
emphasizing
doing that?
certain parts. And so, I mean, those things are kind of fun. But when you do that to another person or to a group of people, then you're killing them because you're dehumanizing them. You're taking away kind of the fullness of who they are, and you're making a cartoon out of them. And that leads you to look at them as enemies too. You only emphasize certain things instead of seeing all of who they are.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things if Jesus were using words from today, that bullying would be another word put under this. When you're showing hatred, violence towards someone else through bullying, whether you're being bullied or you're doing it, Jesus said, no, that's killing people. Is that killing them physically, emotionally, or spiritually? Bullying.
Emotionally and physically sometimes.
It could even physically, yeah.
James.
Can I just point out that dog is a perfect representation of don't talk to me, I'm angry.
Yes. That's exactly what it is. All right.
Listen,
That's another thing for saying angry.
I'm going to read some situations.
physically.
You tell me if they're right or they're wrong. Because tell you what, in life, sometimes it's harder to figure out what is right and wrong. So 1 through 10. 1, completely right. 10, completely wrong. So 1 is completely right. Here's the situation. A parent slaps a toddler's hand to keep them from touching an electrical outlet. Is that completely right? Wrong, in between. I saw Jake's hand first.
2.
All right, 2. 1, okay. You're doing something. It's violent to slap someone.
Actually,
Does it
yeah,
make
might
it
be
better
true.
because you're saving them?
Yes, it does make sense.
You can do it without. Hey, you can do it without hitting them though.
All right.
Yeah, it's literally a matrix. Like,
Here's another one. A parent whacks a child with a belt
That happened to me.
because the child's crying makes it hard to hear the TV.
Oh my God! That's a level 1 up there.
maybe if it's the
When I
Roblox
hear my
game.
dad take off his I get scared.
Me too. I remember
One
my
of
dad
the funniest
saying,
times. Oh, well, not really funny.
Number 3.
Hi.
This is a little bit, this commandment and also the next one. A man and woman are a date. They start to kiss. Soon, one is forcing the other to do things that person doesn't want to
That's
do.
not
That's 10.
10.
10.
All
All
right.
right.
Oh no.
10. Walk away. Get away.
Oh my god, oh my god.
stop. Don't touch me.
Oh yeah.
A soldier fights in a war.
Oh, that's a 1.
That's 5. I'd call that a 5.
That's a 3.
All right?
3. Yeah.
A soldier,
A soldier fights in a war.
I wouldn't call that a 10 because the person that he like killed or something also agreed to fight.
All right. So that's a situation where we may get. We've got a choice to make. If our government says, the government we live under says, we're going to war, and they're going to draft you into the war.
If you're a guy.
If you're going to be a soldier,
That's not your case, so.
do you fight?
But if you're 18, you're second.
Do you be willing to kill or not? In this instance, Lutherans, yay for Lutherans, give a yay for Lutherans. All right, Lutherans came up with this answer because it was happening at the time when Luther was living. He said, okay, here's what we're going to do. War is wrong, it's killing, it's always wrong, it's always a sin. On the other hand, in this world, what if a country is murdering half of its citizens? What if a country is assassinating people throughout the world?
Wow.
And you say, okay, we've got to go to war to stop this. Like Hitler, back in World War II,
Jewish
got a
camps.
crazy guy named Hitler in Germany, and he was killing all the Jews and trying to take over the world. So people said, we got to go to war. So here's what they said. Number 1, if you have a war, if you're a Christian and you're asking, can I go to fight in the war? Is it a just war? Does it have a purpose that is ultimately good, like stopping an evil army?
Hitler?
One of the other things they ask is the war going to do as little damage as possible to the general population, to civilians, to families? Another thing, and there were several things listed, but one of them was, are you willing to help the people repair their country again? In other words, we'll go in and we'll help them rebuild the churches and stores that we bombed. Are you willing to do that? And they said, in that case, they called it a just war. They said, you can go into that war. War is always wrong, it's always killing. However, in our world, sometimes you have to make a choice between one evil and a greater evil. So that was to help. Anyway, Lutherans were one of the ones that came up with that. Now,
Were you born in 1950?
no.
It's the whole thing.
57.
So
Waterburger was here before you were.
Yes, it was. Waterbury's old.
So
Okay.
Casey, you just said you're 1957. The 10 Commandments came out 1956.
Was it? It really was a year
It
before.
was the year before you were
How
born.
about that?
I looked
knew
it up.
that somewhere in the back of my head. Let's read the 6th commandment together. You shall not commit adultery. We didn't all read it together. Everybody's eyes. Everybody's eyes to the front. Read it together. You shall not commit adultery. All right, so let's read Luther's explanation. We are to fear and love God so that in matters of sex, our words and conduct are pure and honorable, and husband and wife love and respect each other. So, easy to remember, killing, do not kill, right in the middle of the commandments. Number 5, six and sex, S-I-X, So it's easy to remember which number, if you're saying what number of the commandments, this one is number 6, and it deals with sex. So,
Whoa! That's not
big-
Oh my god, I love that.
That's the
And then they like recreated it when they were older.
So, God gives sex to help a married couple become deeper in their relationship, and that can happen throughout a lifetime. I've known people in nursing homes still, still romantic. Okay. I know it grosses you out to even think. I know. So what's happening in these pictures? There's a couple, husband and wife, but what are they doing?
He's just looking at her dress.
Is this reminding how
Totally, Jody.
Oh.
I really think he's just looking at our Air Force.
And what's happening on this side?
See how short it looks?
He's trying to show off his muscles.
Yeah, that and there's somebody else
On the
other
bottom,
than
let people have the girl there. I feel like 2 hands in their butt as they walk.
yeah.
That one kind of looks like Jake, the bottom left, like the hair.
That guy looks like he's like 50.
He looks like what?
He looks like he's 50.
He's like,
No, he looks like Austin
So-
Moon from Austin and Ally.
I used to watch that all the time.
Safe sex, God created it. It's meant to be husband and wife in a marriage. That's safe sex. God made it to be safe so that because God knows if sex is misused, people get hurt. 1, rape. That violates both this commandment and it also violates that one about killing or doing violence against people. Rape always is against at least 2 of God's commandments. Diseases. If you sleep around with lots of different people, if they have a disease, you get the disease. If they get 2 diseases, you get 2 diseases.
What if they know?
Some sexual diseases can be healed with medication, others cannot. You have them for life from just one time together. Breakup of the family. How does that happen? And I know a lot of you have been through this, or you have aunts or uncles who have been through divorce. And if the parents split up, then often you have to go with one parent most of the time, another part of the time. They try to work it out, and there are a lot of reasons that marriages can break up. This one I say is meant to protect marriage, and that is when a husband or wife goes and has sex with someone else. That's the true meaning of adultery. Often then the family split. There are other reasons. You know what the number 1 cause of divorce is? Money.
Cheating. Oh
Money. Sex is second, but money is first. People not either having different ideas about money, not having enough money, fighting about money all the time, that kind of thing. There are other reasons too.
I thought the number 1 cause for divorce was marriage.
Thank you. Yeah. But hopefully, marriage does not necessarily lead to a divorce. But parents, generally, they still love their kids. They may not be able to get along with each other. They may not have been able to follow this commandment the way they should have. But you're not the reason. If you live in a divorced family, you're not the reason for their divorce. And they will try to do everything to love you, both of them, even if they're not together. Yes, Brent.
I don't know. This is probably how the relationship break up. I don't know why it's on the news. It was on the news and it was talking about how this guy was a girlfriend for his mom.
Oh my god! What?
Wait,
what?
first, mom or mom? His own
I'll tell you what.
Okay, that's not what you
Sometimes,
don't say that.
let me tell you one other cause, because this one, some of you are going to come to me or Pastor Kevin about this. Someday, you may want to get married.
Not to your mom.
And not to your mom, no. You know what? There's even, there are about 300 other laws in the Bible. One of those is
No, they
a
had to
son
move.
cannot go marry his dad's wife or
They
something
had,
like
they
that.
had to move to Alabama because because like their mom was getting threatened to go to jail, and they're all, I don't care if I go to jail, I still love you, and all this weird stuff.
No, not that way. Not that way.
That's sweet.
So,
Kind of scary.
think about this.
There's also laws.
It was, yeah,
Yes,
that's
I
when
know.
they had to move to Alabama because they were in Alabama.
Also, there was one religious group in the United States, and they believed you could have several wives, and for a while, it's now against the law, but for a while, there was a group that would, you could have several wives. You can't have several wives all at once.
Keisha.
You can't be married to 3 people at the same
Unless
time.
you're in the box.
Yep.
Unless you're the
Let's go on. One other thing, and I've had couples.
I could have caught it.
Exactly like.
Now look this
I'm
way,
not a
please.
blind.
Alright, be quiet.
This way. One other thing you want to think about is religion and your faith. I've had some couples come to my office and they're thinking of getting a divorce because their faith is so different. Or some of them don't have faith at all. And sometimes couples work through that, but a lot of times couples think, oh, we're in love, we want to get married. And they do, and they don't think about, like, they may have very different ideas about faith. Or they may have different ideas about maybe one of them wants to have 10 kids. The other one says,
What?
no, I don't have any
Go
kids.
over one on me one
And they don't
second.
talk about it before they get
Not
married.
in my body.
So,
I just thought about this, but whenever I was thinking of it, if the mom already had kids and she was with her son, the kids would like, the kids would like, their stepdad would be there.
Your brother would be a
That's
dad.
disgusting. We need to stop thinking about
there-
sons
Can
of
we
your
stop
mothers.
thinking about incest?
all right, 2 other things. Just going to mention that we're going to move along.
Yeah.
2 other things. This one you need to know. The quickest in the United States, there are about top 4 ways you go into poverty. One of them is if you get pregnant in high school.
What's poverty?
That you become poor. You go into poverty. One of the top 4 ways that people go into poverty and have very little to live on, maybe homeless, is that they get pregnant in high school. That particularly affects women because they're the ones giving birth, and sometimes the guy's gone. You know, he's not going to do anything. And all of a sudden, she's the one left raising the child. And that's the number, I think it's in the top 4 of reasons people have. Another is emotional pain. I'm going to tell you what, sex changes you emotionally, spiritually, your whole being. And if you've had sex and you're thinking, I'm really close to that person now, and the other person thinks, yeah, that was for one night. The person who thought it was really close, they're gone, and you're left with emotional pain. So I'm serious. God knows. A lot of times you don't think about God knowing about sex. God invented sex. If sex is misused, it's God's great gift to husband and wife, but it's misused, it can cause lots of pain. So, we're going to need to stop and go on in just a little bit. First, let me just say a word about Pastor Kevin, what he talked about. Divorce is included in the Bible about about a marriage breaking up, and that's hard for everybody. And the Bible gives a few reasons for divorce. It's not just because you don't like each other anymore. If you don't like each other, well, get over it and like each other tomorrow. If you don't like each other, get over it. All right. But the Bible gives some reasons for divorce. The reason. Did you hear Pastor Kevin's sermon on Sunday?
Yes.
He said, if Jesus says do not divorce, because before that, at that time, a guy could just go to his wife and say, I don't like
You
the
burnt
food.
my chicken.
You burnt the chicken for supper, and all the guy had to do was write on a piece of paper, you're divorced, send her out, And in those days, 2,000 years ago, women didn't have a way to make a living. And so they went into poverty, and they either had to go live, they either had to become a prostitute, they had to become a whore, or they had to, just beg. Those were only two things they could do. So when Jesus said don't divorce, he was especially talking to guys. Don't do that to your wife. Today, hang on. Today, both women and men have a way of making a living. So anyway, God wants to help couples get through tough times. It doesn't always work. Everyone sins. This is one sin. But everybody has some kind of sin. So there's a story when Jesus met this woman, and these guys who were religiously had big rocks in their head. And they said, we're going to stone this woman to death. They're going to throw rocks to her. And Jesus said, wait.
Well, how is that funny?
Wait. Jesus said, wait. Because, why are you going to do this? They said, because she's been married 5 times and now she's living with some guy and she's not married. And Jesus said,
because you kicked her out.
whoever's without sin, cast the first stone. And they all realized, we all have sinned in some way. So they went away. And Jesus said, you're forgiven. Go and sin no more. Have a new life. Start over again.
I thought you were talking about, I thought you were saying like the ex-husband was like getting mad that she was with someone not married. I was like, you kicked her out.
These were guys who did, all they knew is that, that she had sinned. So, only one more thing I want to say. And everyone goes through this. Jesus said, even if you lust, it's as though you've committed adultery. So that means even if you've lusted in your head, you're guilty of sin too. Which we talked about last time. Who are sinners? All of us. We are all sinners in one way or another. Pressure. If someone is pressuring you to do something you don't want to do, that's not love. I guarantee you that.
Unless they brainwash us.
So, on that note, what is the response if someone tells you, if you love me, you will do this? What is the response back?
They don't love you, man.
You don't love me.
End it. Right now.
If you love me, you wouldn't ask.
That sucks, because they don't love you anymore.
Hey, I'm giving you a tool. Because as Pastor Casey says, pressure comes. And it's likely that you in this room will be pressured. And you will be in love. You will be head over heels. You will be infatuated with this person. Because you like them. You don't like being alone. And all of a sudden, you feel great and honest. And yet this person will try to take advantage of you and say, well, if you love me, you're not ready, you don't want to do this. If you love me, you'll do this. The response is, if you love me, you won't ask.
And then
That's a serious response. Because if they truly love you, and they care about you and not themselves, they will honor you.
This was not.
That's where little brother says,
And if they don't honor you, kick them to the curb.
Absolutely.
Woo, yeah.
Or just
One more
or
thing.
you
I
can
said
just
one
make
more
them
thing already, but one more thing. There are several kinds of loves. In the English language, we just have one word, love. But in the Bible, there were Greek words, and they had several words. One was philios, like the love for a brother or a sister or a friend. They're all good. 2 is eros. That's romantic, passionate love. That includes kissing and
arrow.
E-R-R. Yeah, E-R-O-S. And then the third one
Agape.
is God's love. Agape. Ooh, Dawson knew that word. Give him a, yeah, ooh.
Good job, Dawson.
Agape love.
Coach Christian talked about those 3 a lot.
One more thing. Just listen up here. Look up here. One moment. Then we'll take a break.
Guys, be quiet.
Agape love is when you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of yourself for the other person. Like, I always want my way. No, I won't have my way this time because I want my spouse to feel good about having her way. So sometimes you may sacrifice a little bit of what you want in order that the other person can have some happiness. So agape is doing something. Agape is not what you feel. The Bible never tells us what God feels. The Bible tells us what God does for you because He has agape love. So agape love is doing something on behalf of the other. Now we're going to take a break.
We're back, and we're going to look now at the 7th commandment. We have up there, everybody together, read. Thou shalt not steal. So, what does that mean? Oh,
You shouldn't
guess I better
steal.
turn this on. Okay, Luther's explanation. We should fear and love God, that we may not take our neighbor's money, or what?
Covenant.
Or property.
Covenant. Yeah.
Nor get them by false wear or dealing, which we don't try to cheat our neighbor out of his property, but help him to improve and protect his property and business, that is, his means are preserved and his condition is improved. So, as Pastor Casey said, each of the commandments are about protecting something. So what is this commandment protecting?
Property.
Very good. It's right there in front. I mean, it's not that difficult. So our property is a gift from who?
God.
So everything that we have comes from
God.
God, absolutely. Not only ours, not only what we have,
Everybody.
but also what our neighbor has too. That's also a gift from God. So this command protects our property, and it also protects our neighbor's property. So there's this saying that God makes it rain on the just and the unjust. That means God gives His good gifts to who?
Everyone.
Everyone. So we have to recognize that when we're looking at property, when we're looking at things, we're looking at not only ours, but our neighbors as well. And the thing about it is, we all know that we shouldn't steal. Everybody knows this. It's like one of almost a universal law that everybody has. Now some communities and some cultures say you don't steal within your culture, but if you go outside your culture, can you steal? In their cultures? Yeah.
That's okay.
In their culture, yeah. So like some of the ancient Native American cultures, like some of the Sioux Indians, Apache, Cheyenne, you weren't considered a good warrior unless you could sneak into the enemy camp and steal like horses or women or goods.
Women, children.
Yes, that's what they
Don't
did back
forget
then.
children. They
Children.
also
Yes,
took
they would
children
do
and
this.
made them slaves. And then made like
They would do this, and so when Christians saw that happening,
Stealing you.
Hey, we're the only
would
way
stop.
that
they were appalled because we did believe that stealing is universal. You don't steal from your group, and you don't steal outside your group, because everything is a gift from. So, and the other thing, we know what will happen if everybody starts trying to steal from everybody else, right?
Yeah.
What's that going to be like?
Not good.
trouble.
What if you had to worry about somebody coming around and trying to steal your French fries tonight while you were trying to
Oh,
eat your
dang,
food?
someone tried.
And it's like, what if everybody was
Fall on
spinning
my face.
paranoid trying to guard all their stuff all the time?
Hey, well, if that's the case, then no one would be stealing because everyone would be trying to protect their stuff.
Not necessarily. I was going to do an experiment with that tonight, but I didn't think we would have enough time. I was going to give you all each like candy or something like that, and make you like put it in your pocket where you can sit, and then tell somebody try to steal it. The one with the most candy at the end wins.
I get somebody a little
See, some people would go around stealing. Others would be trying to protect. Guess what we would have in the room?
I would play.
It would be chaos. It would be miserable. We know we're not supposed to steal. But here's the question. You know, like in our society today, not only do we worry about our goods, but what about our ideas? What about our thoughts? What about somebody who is working on a project and they come up with a really good idea,
Someone
and
takes
then somebody else takes it? You know, we actually have laws against that, because we believe there is such a thing as intellectual property. You have ideas, you have thoughts. So if you use somebody else's thoughts, you are to what is called attribute. You are to tell others that these aren't my thoughts. This is somebody else's. So like in my sermon this past week, I attributed something to Pastor Casey. Attributed, not contributed, attributed. Because in the same text that I preached on, he had preached on it years ago. And he told us during staff meeting that after preaching on it, it went out on the radio, like some of our sermons do, And then he got a phone call from somebody who was upset about him because of the way he preached on it. Now, I could have told that story and said this happened to me, but is that honest?
No.
I'm stealing Pastor Casey's story.
Which is
That's not right.
Again.
That's not right. And so I told everybody this was Pastor Casey's story. It wasn't mine. It was his. And so then everybody could ask him about it instead of me.
Hey, Pastor Casey, what happened?
So it was on divorce, and I told some things that I thought, God can forgive and stuff. And so this woman didn't like that, and she called and said, "No, you should kick people out who, if they've been divorced or if they get remarried again." And she was just angry. Most everybody else really liked it.
Just tell her she's not the pastor and be quiet.
That doesn't necessarily work.
No.
Well, and part of the reason that doesn't work is, remember what we said. Who is a sinner?
Everyone.
Everybody. So the Pastor Casey and I sometimes get things wrong. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Absolutely, we get things wrong. And so sometimes when we're...
Wait. Both of us do?
Yeah, we do.
Oh,
We
okay.
do. So if we get something wrong, so let's say we take the Bible and we take something in the Bible and we don't preach it correctly, and you're reading along in the Bible and you read it and go, wait a minute here, they didn't preach it correctly. It really is your job to come and correct us and tell us that we messed up. That's part of our checks and balances in the church. That we believe even lay folks, which clergy are called clergy. If you're not a clergy, you're called lay. Okay, that's why I use that term. So, huh? Clergy is somebody who is a pastor, who God has called to be a pastor. Wear that collar, we get up, preach, teach. Lay people don't have that calling to get up and preach and teach. But we're all still Christians. And so even folks who are not called to be pastors, y'all can read the Bible, right?
Yeah.
God has given you the Holy Spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
God has helped you understand the Bible when you read it, right?
Yeah.
And so if we are off base as pastors, it is your job to come tell us that we're wrong. Or to ask us, why did you preach this way? Why did you say the text meant this? And then we talk about it. Because we are not above sinning. We sin too. So, intellectual property. You have it too. So, every commandment, let's remember this, also has within it what we should do. So, you hear you should not steal. And this is why Luther also says, okay, you're not supposed to do this. But within that, there's the negative. But for every negative, there's generally a what?
Positive.
Positive. So the negative is do not steal. So what would the negative is do not steal. What would the positive be?
Not stealing.
You follow that.
So if you don't take somebody's stuff, what do you help
Give
them
somebody
do?
stuff.
Get it back.
You help them keep what is there.
Exactly.
So if you're at school and you see somebody steal something from another person,
Which is only.
Oh,
what do you do?
help them get it back.
Help them get it back.
Dawson.
Yesterday,
I didn't do anything.
During first period, someone in the boys' restroom stole the bathroom stall door.
Are you serious?
That right.
Wait, what happened?
Yeah, that's that stupid TikTok stuff.
First of all,
Wait,
Wait, Austin, what happened?
People
Someone stole the bathroom stall door.
October that's happening at
it's Dawn.
It's not a good idea. So, the opposite is we help others keep their property. This who's it a gift from? Who's their property a gift from?
God!
God. So we don't take and we help others keep. So those are the two things with commandment number 7. So now we go to the 8th commandment. Let's read it together. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. What does that mean? We should fear and love God so that we may not deceitfully belie, betray, slander, or defame our neighbor. Luther used some really funky words sometimes, didn't he?
Yes.
But defend him and think well and speak well of him and put the best construction on everything. So don't lie about what your neighbor did or did not do. And then if your neighbor does something, even when you think it's questionable, you try to put the best possible spin on it. Yes, Dawson?
What if you killed someone and you watched them do it and you were brought up in court? And
Don't
then you
lie.
have to
Don't lie for your
That's
neighbor.
guilt by association.
Do you lie?
Yeah, did you not pay attention when we got yelled at in the courtroom?
So don't lie.
I'm so scared.
So why is this important? 2 reasons. Number 1, what does it protect?
Reputation.
Reputation.
It protects your reputation. Remember when we talked about name
Yes.
and your character?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want your character dragged through the mud?
No, sir.
No, we do not. So this protects your reputation. And then the other thing it does is it protects us from falling into what?
Chaos.
We'll get to that in a minute. So let's talk about those things. Let's talk about this kind of from the get-go. Why is it so easy to lie?
Because it's easier than telling the truth. It's our human nature.
Okay, part of it is our human nature. Why is it easier than not telling the truth?
Telling the truth can be hard sometimes.
Okay, yes, telling the truth can be very hard sometimes.
You can get more consequences by telling the truth. instead
You
of
could get
lying.
consequences. So it's like, this happens to me in my house. Something gets broken, and I know my wife and I didn't do it.
Guys, it's not me.
So I know it's one of 3 other people in the house.
It's the dog.
But did this
Yes,
happen?
The dog.
It's always here.
And it's always.
It's always
oh,
Kira's
it's not
fault.
the dog.
It's
But
Kira's
guess
fault.
what happens when I ask each and every one of those 3 people if they did it?
I didn't do it.
It's not me. I didn't do
Like
it.
that one time the dog Kira clogged the toilet and said,
Whoa.
Good job, Kevin.
So,
and now it's broken.
no, she didn't clog. That was not her fault. That was not the reason the toilet broke. The toilet broke for another reason.
What a
When you tell the truth in those circumstances, there are consequences. And so sometimes to get off, it's easier to lie. And the other thing is, sometimes, and this is the famous one with guys and their wives or their girlfriends, and their girlfriends come up and they say, "Does this dress make me look fat?"
I said that today.
What is the only appropriate answer?
No.
Pretty
You
much.
can't say you look like a pig.
You look dark.
You look like a cow.
Because what are the consequences?
You're
Yeah.
lying to me.
I did that today.
You
Like,
sleep
what
on
if
the
you
couch.
ask that and then you don't want them to look ridiculous? So what do you do then?
You say
You say never go change.
What
We
if
say,
it does?
"I'm
What
sorry."
if it does?
Well,
Usually, my husband will say,
It's not the
"You
best
know, it doesn't look the best, but why don't you wear that other thing? It looks better on you."
Aw, that's so sweet.
My response sometimes is, "Are you happy with it?" That's what I say. Are you happy with it? But here's the thing. Here's the problem.
I'm never asking for you.
Here's the problem, even with lies that have good intentions. Okay. All right, and I'm going to use an example. I'm not being political with this, but I'm being real with it. Because back when COVID first started, we knew there was going to be a shortage of protective equipment for hospitals and other people.
And toilet paper.
And
We didn't know
so,
that at first.
Know that.
it came out, and one of the head people who was helping guide us through the pandemic got up and said, "Oh, you shouldn't wear masks. They're really not helpful. If you don't wear them right, they really don't do any good." So one of the chief people who was in charge of this thing told everybody not to wear masks, and the reason he did it is because he didn't want everybody to go out and buy all the masks off the shelves. He wanted to make sure that there was plenty for the hospitals and stuff.
Well, that's
So
good,
later
but,
on,
like,
okay, this is why it's bad. Because later on, when it became evident we needed to wear masks, and he got up and told everybody, "You need to wear masks," what did everybody remember?
Him saying that you don't need to wear masks.
And giving every reason why you shouldn't. And so he undermined his own character, he undermined his own authority, and a lot of people remembered that. So there are circumstances where you need to tell the truth and not bear false witness, because it's going to undermine your own character. It'll come back to bite you time and time and time again. Even if you have good intentions.
Y'all heard that song "White Liar" by Miranda Lambert?
I don't listen to music.
Yeah. So
Truth comes out a little at a time.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's really important to remember. Okay, so here's the next thing. Here's the next thing in light of this commandment. Why is it so easy to believe things that we want to believe instead of checking it out for the facts.
Because the facts are harder.
Sure.
Because we like our own ideas affirmed.
We like to believe that we're right.
We do. We like to believe that we're right. We like to believe that we have the truth. We like to believe that our stance is the right stance. And so if you research things, a lot of times you'll do what's called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias means you go and look for all the things that agree with your point of view, and you totally disregard everything that does not.
Is that why sometimes teachers tell you to do the complete opposite of what you want to do?
Yes. Yeah, a person who is very good at debate, a person who is very good at reasoning, will look at both sides of the argument and will say, okay, look, this side, and we balance them against one another. That's what a person who is really wrestling with their bias will do. It's much easier to ignore all that other evidence. But when you're ignoring all that evidence, what are you doing to yourself?
You're hurting yourself because you're not.
You're lying to yourself, aren't you? And so this commandment is, again, it's about making sure you're seeking the truth. Not only about your neighbor, but also about yourself. And so you don't just go looking for the things that you want to look for, especially in your neighbor. So if I hear a story about Dawson, and I hear a rumor that he sucks his thumb when he sleeps.
It's probably true.
What, you don't do that?
Kevin!
But I hear that, and it's
Kevin.
been spread all over school, and everybody's laughing at it, and I don't like Dawson. So when I hear the rumor,
You believe it.
I believe it, and I go spread it, because I don't like Dawson. What's the right thing to do? What's the right thing to do?
Ask him.
Well, ask him. Do you really suck your thumb?
But
No!
what if he lies and says he doesn't because he's too
Yeah,
embarrassing?
because a lot of
That's
kids
on
do
him,
that.
not on me.
Well,
See, I'm trying to do the right thing.
Dawson lies.
I am trying to put the best possible spin on what I've been told. Or I'm trying to look at what he does in the best possible light. I'm not going about it for my own personal reasons and lifting up the bad. Instead, I'm trying to look for the good. And I think that's really, really, really important. Because that goes into the next question. Why is it so easy to react negatively when someone says something that we don't like?
Because you don't like him.
Because we automatically go into defense mode, and then sometimes when you go into defense mode, we automatically get negative.
I see.
And our brains are actually programmed to look for the negative.
That's fun.
I mean, and part of it goes to the way that kind of happened with evolution. Like back when our ancestors were on the Serengeti in Africa, and they're walking through the brush, and they hear a rustling in the brush.
It's a lion.
Right, it's a lion, it's a snake, it's an enemy. I'm in trouble.
We're gonna
I have to take care of myself. So it's our brains go negative, and it takes time for the positive to catch up. So our brain automatically goes negative. We look around, we get defensive, we get worried, and then we see it's just a bird. So then you breathe a sigh of relief. But it's programmed in us to go negative. So that's why, in history, there have been news channels that come up which try to give you all the positive news.
Yeah, like,
Very personal problem.
oh gosh, John Krasinski. What was it?
Some good news.
Some Good News.
I love that show.
Right? Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
No.
guess what? They generally fail.
The best show is the Andy Griffin show.
Yes.
They generally fail. Why?
Because people are always
good news.
trying
Because
to
people tune
Yeah.
into the train wrecks.
Like now.
People want to see the negative.
Abracadabra.
And so the challenge for us as Christians is to say, okay, no, I'm not going to emphasize the negative. I'm going to turn and look for the positive. I'm not going to look for the negative in people. I'm going to try to build them up and look for the positive. Again, these commandments are not just telling us the negative, they're also stressing the positive. So following this commandment not only says I'm not going to lie about someone, it means I'm going to look for the best thing possible within them. And I'm going to admit when I'm wrong. I'm going to reevaluate things, and I'm going to say, if I'm given new information that tells me that I was wrong, I will admit it.
We're not very good at that.
No, we're not.
Nope.
No, we're not. And we're much more aligned, particularly like in our society today, to do this. I mean, you've heard of cancel culture. You know, why is it so easy to want someone who I don't agree with to be canceled?
Cancel.
That way all of our problems go away and no one's arguing with us anymore.
Yeah, it seems like it, right? I don't have to listen to another view. I don't have to listen to another opinion. I don't have to listen to somebody else's position. I can just be safe and comfortable within my own little bubble. And while that does seem really comfortable, do you ever grow?
No.
In order for you to grow in knowledge, in order for you to grow in understanding, you have to be challenged. And you have to figure out whether or not your argument, your position stands up. And so like when I get up here and I talk to you about why I believe what I believe, it's because I have challenged myself. I've listened to atheists, I've listened to Muslims, I've listened to others who challenge my worldview in Allah.
Oh yeah.
But I've listened to those on YouTube and other places. I've listened to their arguments. And I've measured them against my own. And I've challenged myself. And so the positions that I hold because of the challenge. Now if somebody has a very different position, you know, like there's different positions that Pastor Casey and Keisha hold that are different than mine. But I listen to them talk. I listen to them express their position. I may not agree with it.
To get better.
But I'm going to listen and I'm going to say, okay, if they tell me something that I haven't wrestled with yet, that means I have to dig a little deeper and I have to wrestle with it. And I don't hate them because they believe differently than me. Because what am I trying to do?
Get better.
What kind of spin am I putting on their arguments? What kind of spin am I putting on their position? Positive spin. And not only that, commandment number 5. What was that? Commandment number 5
You shall
was?
not kill.
So, do I dehumanize them?
No. So you're not killing them.
No, they're another. I mean, Pastor Casey and Keisha, I love them to death. I mean, they're my co-workers, the children of God, just like me. And I'm going to defend them, and I'm going to listen to them, and I'm going to treat them as people because that's what we're called to do.
Samesies.
Exactly.
Good job, Keisha.
Hey, Pastor Casey didn't
But
say anything.
it's also even as simple as
I'm
like,
always right.
okay, JC. If JC likes chocolate ice cream and I like vanilla ice cream.
Hey, we're strawberry
If JC likes vanilla ice cream and I like chocolate ice cream, I'm not gonna totally like throw like
I'm this is her.
JC, I hate you because you like vanilla ice cream.
Don't
Stab him with
diss.
the ice cream.
Yeah, don't hit
Okay,
it.
now it's really important. Okay, we talked a little bit about the first part. But here's the question. This is a tough question. Is there also a time where we have to draw a line in the sand? Is there a time where we have to say, I cannot agree with this argument. I think this argument is wrong.
When it goes in.
Yeah. So, yeah, how do we know when to do that? That's a big question. Some of it's obvious. So if someone says, oh, I think I can steal whatever I want.
You're wrong.
You're wrong. You're wrong. Now that may come, we don't hate the person because they may have been taught that. They may have been brought up that this is okay.
Well,
So we don't hate them, but we have to be very defined and say, no, that is a wrong position. I cannot agree with it. I cannot do that.
try and change their mind.
And we can. And how do you change somebody's mind?
I don't know.
You know,
Give 'em
sometimes
facts.
sometimes you argue with them, sometimes you love them, you know, but sometimes you just got to draw that line, and sometimes you just have to walk away. And I mean, that's one of the things that Jesus talked about his disciples. Sometimes when you go out there and you spread the gospel and you try to get people to come over to your side and they totally reject you, he says, dust your feet off, go. You're not going to win the argument. You're not going to make any converts. Walk away. So sometimes we got to do that.
Walk away
Sometimes.
before you punch someone.
Yes, arguing does not usually change
Hit my
somebody's mind. Then why are they lawyers?
Because they're trying to persuade somebody else, not the person.
Exactly, they're trying to change their mind.
All right, so let's look at the 9th and 10th commandments. We're going to put these 2 commandments together because they're very, very similar. So let's read them together, 9 and 10. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his cattle, nor anything else that is his.
What about his toes?
What about some nice toes? I would like to have them.
Do you know?
We'll get into that.
Awesome, right?
I
wrong.
vaguely remember that, but
Dodgers
yeah.
games are my vitamins. No way.
Okay. Got about 10 more minutes. We should fear and love God that we may not craftily seek to get our neighbor's inheritance or house and obtain it by a show of justice and right, etc., but help and be of service to Him and keeping it. Here's the explanation to the 10th. We should fear and love God that we may not estrange, force, or entice away our neighbor's wife, servants, or cattle, but urge them to stay and diligently to do their duty. So what is the difference between this and not stealing?
It's jealousy.
Yeah, Kevin, you're right.
Sneaking.
Because this one protects our neighbor by examining our heart. That's the protection that is here. It protects our neighbor by us examining our own heart. So what does that mean? This is how we'll. What does it mean to covet something?
To be jealous of it.
Not just to be jealous of it.
To want it, to desire
But to
it.
really, really, really want it. In fact, the Hebrew word can actually be translated as lust. You lust for it. Yes, Dawson.
Is it like to the point where you want it so bad that you'll kill him, or is that too far?
It can't be. It can't actually be that. It's that state of heart that says, you know, I really, 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 really want it. So this command is really a matter of the heart. It's one of the only commandments that focuses on the state of our heart and our desires. And where do you think this coveting, this lusting, generally comes from?
The desire to want and have everything else everyone else has. Comparing ourselves to others. Totally
So it's
didn't read
compared.
that
This is why it
off.
says, "You shall not covet your neighbor's stuff," because the tendency is to look at what my neighbor has, to look at what my neighbor is able to do, and then want what they have.
Or be better than them.
Or yeah, exactly. Or to be better than them. So the question is, you know, essentially what this commandment says is, what does it mean to be content?
Be happy with what
It
you
says,
have.
be content. Don't covet, don't lust after that. Be content with what you got. I mean, when you start thinking about what you got, and this is a tough thing to do oftentimes, because, you know, in our society today, there are people who have a whole lot of stuff, man, and they do a whole lot of fun things. And the tendency is to look at that and go, man, I wish I could do that too. I really wish I could take off and go on vacations all the time and travel all over the world. I really wish I could have a brand new truck that could do everything I wanted to do. I wish I could go out to my ranch and do everything I want to do. I wish I had a ranch for some people. But the tendency is to keep comparing ourselves to others instead of looking at saying, so what do I have? What do I already have? Do I already have a house and a roof over my head? Do I already have clothes? Do I already have food? Do I have parents who love and take care of me? Do I have the ability to get to school and learn to better my knowledge and hopefully one of these days better myself? Do I have the ability to work? Can I walk? Can I talk? Can I see? Because some people can't see. Can I talk? Because some people can't talk. Can I smell? Can I hear? Are you listening to all the different things you already have? Because when you focus on that, then you have a state of gratitude. And that's kind of the opposite on this commandment. You know, it's not just helping our neighbor keep up with everything that he has, but it's also within our hearts, because the opposite of lust and coveting is gratitude. And so I look at what I already have, and I thank God for it.
And that's why social media can be so hard, because I'm guilty of like sitting for hours and scrolling through and being like,
Keisha!
Keisha, you're
Hey, I
awesome.
can't do that.
You're awesome.
Oh my gosh, Keisha. It's
Guess
almost
what my
like...
next slide was?
Woo!
You're
Yeah,
awesome.
Keisha!
Hey, Keisha, guess what? I can't do that.
There's a reason.
It's
Because your mom and I are trying to protect you from that. So, I mean, and actually recently, I don't know
Kevin.
if you've listened to the news,
YouTube.
but Facebook was about to kick off another form of Instagram for people your age. And they had people do studies and research, and they found that it had very, very negative effects, particularly on teenage girls. I got on Instagram because they were comparing themselves to everybody else and the way they looked and the things that they did, and it made them depressed and made them feel inadequate.
That's why you don't do social media.
And so really, there's a lot of dangers
That's
to
what like
this.
drugs. Don't do
And so
drugs.
that's why,
Don't do social
that's
media.
why, don't get addicted to your phones, man. I know it's really tempting to. But look at what you have. Look at what you already have been gifted, and that will change your heart around and help you see things from a different perspective.
Besides your phone that you already have.
Exactly.
I love my phone.
I don't get addicted to it. I didn't tell you don't use it. I mean, I use my phone. I'm on social media too. Try not to get addicted to it.
No, I think you're on this page.
So the conclusion, Luther has a conclusion to this, to his commandments, and he says, what does God say about all of this stuff? And he says this. God says in Exodus 20, verse 5 and following, that I, the Lord, your God, am a jealous God. I visit the iniquity, the sin of the fathers and mothers upon their children to the third and fourth generation. Now that doesn't sound very good, does it? That doesn't sound very fair. That God visits your sin, my sin, upon generations, 2 or 3 generations. So that sin is passed down. That doesn't sound very good, does it? No, not cool. It was like, God, why are you punishing my children and others for my sin? Do sins have consequences?
Yes.
Do sins have consequences on those who don't even commit them?
Yes.
That's how they go down. It's not that God is saying, I'm doing this on purpose. It's just the natural way of things. If you sin and mess up, there are repercussions. Things go on down the line. Sometimes they will last generations. But here's the next key. Here's the thing that God says. But I show mercy and love unto thousands of generations for those who love me and keep my commandments. So God, the impact of keeping God's commandments lasts how many generations?
Thousands.
Thousands. So the sin lasts how long? 3 or 4. And the love of God and blessings last thousands. Again, think about what you got. Yes, Kevin.
Since jealousy is technically a sin, isn't God saying that he sins?
Okay, okay. Different type of jealousy. So let's think about this. All right, y'all ain't married yet, but let me pretend, let you get up in your mind and think about this. Let's pretend that you found somebody you really, really love. You married them, and you're enjoying life with them tremendously. Now, if that person that you love is trying to go out and see another person, what does that cause within you?
Jealousy.
Is that bad jealousy or good jealousy? Do you love that person so much that you don't want to see them be with anybody else?
Yeah, apparently.
And you have bound yourselves to each other as husband and wife. Is that a bad thing to be jealous when you love someone so much that you want them to be faithful to you?
No.
It depends on your actions after you're jealous.
If you go kill the man, she'll
Well, yeah, you don't go hurt them or anything else like
Like
that.
what?
But the desire you have is to be in this one-on-one relationship where this other person is not unfaithful to you. So God doesn't want us to be unfaithful, right? He loves us so much that He wants us to be in relationship with Him and not these other false gods. Is that a bad kind of jealousy?
No.
That's a pretty good kind of jealousy. And that's what it means in the Bible when it talks about God being a jealous God. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's not that He's envious. He just wants our attention and wants us to be in relationship one-on-one. So, went through this already. And what this does, what this brings up finally, are the 2 problems of humanity. We actually talked a little bit about this. I'm going to bring it home real fast. So the first one is self-righteousness. And self-righteousness is feeling like I'm good, I'm awesome, and I'm better than everybody else. You ever been around somebody like that?
Yes.
Like being around people like that?
No, I'm around them every day.
So the reason we're not like that is because you look at all those commandments we just went through. How many of you follow every one of them to a T?
No.
So can you think you're better than everybody else
No.
when you fail to keep the commandments? No, you can't. You can't think that you're better than everybody else and get a big head. That's a major problem with our society. It's a major problem with people. They get self-righteous. We can't get that way because we fail to keep the law. The other problem we face is self-loathing. Why do people commit suicide?
They don't like themselves anymore.
They don't like themselves anymore. They don't see any hope.
They
They don't see a way out. There really is a sense of self-loathing and despair. Now, the corrective to that is not the commandment. Because if you keep trying to follow the commandments all the time, what is that going to lead you to? Because you're going to find out I'm failing. I'm failing over and over again. So what does that lead to?
You fail.
At least more self-loathing. But here's the gospel. And this is why Christianity deals with both of these problems. The law, we told you, always condemns. The law always brings you down. Because we fail to keep it. The gospel says that the God who created this universe was willing to come down to earth to take your sin and die for you. So does that mean you're worth something? If the God of the universe was willing to take on human flesh and take your sin upon himself and die for you, does that mean you're worth something? Yes or no?
Yes.
It means you're worth an awful lot. So can you hate yourself if the God of the universe was willing to die for you?
You can.
You can, but it's not smart.
Not if you get that in your head. If you get that in your head that the God of the universe is willing to die for you, you will not hate yourself.
Because you see,
And so Christianity with the law and the gospel gets rid of self-righteousness and it gets rid of self-loathing. And that's really important. All right?
Don't go anywhere.